What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? It is Matty P here with another episode in the Steelers War Room YouTube show series. Look, everything today on the show, I want to talk about Alex Highsmith and what an extension to his contract looks like. You're going to hear lots of different things over the coming weeks, maybe even months, depending on how his contract goes and when it is exactly signed through this preseason. Assuming they do it, that they would have made other moves if they weren't. So really excited to talk to you guys about that today. Lots of different Steeler news coming out, but it is still kind of a bit of a, the dog days of summer, as they like to call it, as we head into camp. Obviously, Kenny Pickett got married. Congratulations to him as well. And then in the next 24 hours, we will get out on your Friday evening in the US, Eastern Daylight Saving Time right now. We will have our next Touchdown Underboys show with my special guest, Shannon White. But anyway, let's get into it. Into Alex Highsmith's contract. So we are going to use over the cap. So those of you that listen to the dollars and cents Mad Monday that we did would know this. And if you haven't, it'd be good to go and check that. We basically went through the roster and why the wizardry, I guess, of Omar Khan and how he's built it. It's not too crazy dollars and cents. It's not like an accounting class, but some pretty cool highlights and some of the cool things he's done. And I'll continue to talk about those. But today's show, as I said, Alex Highsmith contract, pretty simple. I am subscribed over the cap as well, so I can do some things that not the average person can do. Some people like spot rack, other people or spot track. Some people say it either way. But I prefer over the cap. Over the cap, sometimes are situations where they're slower to get a number when there's a contract or a trade. However, they're more accurate. They only put it up when they have as much terms of the deal as possible. So looking at the edge rushers in front of you, or if you're just listening, TJ Watt, obviously with the Steelers, one of our greatest players. He is, or will be one of our greatest players in history, but definitely one of the greatest players in the roster right now. He is the top paid per year edge rusher in the NFL, followed by Bosa, Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, Max Crosby, Bradley Chubb, down to Von Miller. They're all in the 20 million and above bracket, right? So that's just standard on 20 million. So anyone thinking Highsmith's getting 20 million, I don't think there's many to be out there, even the most diehard Steelers fan. He's probably not produced enough to be in that mix. And even still, the Steelers probably don't want to be spending $50 million a year just on a $230 million, $220 million cap, just on Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt as edge rushers, as great as it is to have bookend edge rushers. The other thing I will note is that I've sorted this by edge. They do over the cap sort 3-4 outside linebackers and 4-3 DEs into edge. Almost always they usually fall within this. That's why you've got like a Cameron Jordan in here and a Chandler Jones. That linebacker, there's occasionally guys that do still rush the passer if you sort it like that, but we're going to be having middle linebackers in and out once you got below sort of 18 million. So that clouds it. So let's just work purely on edge rushers, which is what Alex Highsmith is. There's a couple of interesting names, though. You do have Chandler Jones, Ogba, Reddick, Hendrickson, and then you've probably got Josh Sweat as the guys that, Randy Gregory as well. They're the sorts of guys you want to look at when you're looking at a baseline contract for Alex Highsmith and what that's going to look like. I'm going to pick two of those for two different reasons. We're going to pick Josh Sweat because he was coming off his rookie contract. And we're going to look at Trey Hendrickson as well, because one, he's in the North. Two, he had a slower start to production before he signed his deal. And he's kind of at that amount where I think his contract's very interesting in the way that it is set up as well. He also, you've got to look at like in terms of even the snaps that he played and what the comparison looks like there. But we're going to look at those two guys. I'm trying to keep this a pretty brief show for everyone. Okay. So Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat has went after into last year. Basically, he has 28.5 sacks to his career to date. But you take 11 off that. He went into last year with 17 sacks, 17.5 sacks. So he's a good player because one, coming off that rookie contract, B, he was starting to come off that rookie contract, and then you had the fact that he had a similar sack production to Alex Highsmith because Alex Highsmith only has 22.5. Now, yes, that's a bit more than 17. It's 5 more, which is actually a big deal because it's almost 30% more. But we're still talking about guys that are not even averaging. Well, Alex Highsmith now has ticked over the 5 per year, but he had a stellar season with 14.5. But when you look at Josh Sweat's contract, he's got a lot of voidable years. So they kind of did a bit of a weird deal in how it worked, where the Eagles, because of their weird cap situation last year, basically signed him at a $5.8 million cap hit last year, a $9 million cap hit. They signed him for $5 million cap hit this year. Then you have a $9 million cap hit next year. And then there's 3 voidable years where they're spreading a roster bonus. So they're paying him to 2027. He's technically only playing for them in 2023 and 2024. And that's pretty crazy because his cap number, with the way the voidable years works, he'll be actually almost 8% of the Eagles' salary cap in 2025. And he won't even be playing for them. It's a bit of a weird contract. But it helps in terms of the number when we're looking at what he actually signed for. He also delivered OTC do evaluation with players based on PFF performance data, where they basically marry the leaders in a position and their stats, and then they equate it based on the money paid in that position, and they spread it out. So basically, obviously, if you might be only getting paid $2 million a year, but if you have like 20 sacks, your OTC valuation is going to be above $20 million if you're an edge rusher, for example. So that's kind of interesting. But when you look at the contract that he signed, he got extended for 3 years in 2021 for $40 million average pay per year. That's the thing that's why I want to bring up Josh Sweat. The average pay per year, the key thing, because of the weirdness of the voidable years, was $13 million. Then you've got his guarantees of about $15 million. It should be interesting when we go, because we're going to do a dummy contract for Alex Highsmith and see what that looks like. But effective average pay per year, this is a difficult metric, so we're not going to go into that, because by the time I've explained that, we'll be very late on what I plan to be a 15-minute show for you guys to keep it simple. But the key thing with Sweat, as I said, is the $13.3 million, $0.33 million a year, and the $15 million in guarantees. All right, flip over to Trey Hendrickson. So Trey Hendrickson has about 42.5 sacks, or 42 sacks. 42 sacks in his NFL career. If you look at the history of when he basically started with the Saints, went UDFA, not UDFA, UFA, sorry. So used to talking about draft stuff. He went there in 2021, signed a much simpler 4-year deal, simple to explain anyway. $15 million per year, $16 million in guaranteed. So he's got $4 million per year on the 4-year guaranteed, out of his average pay per year of $15 million. So he's getting 44 base, I guess. He's earned 53% of that. And that's done pretty well for him over the last couple of years. So when you look at his contract, very much more simpler to understand, where basically he's got his base salary, which is accelerated through each year. He's got a prorated bonus, which is spread with the $10 million. Interesting, they went roster bonus with him, to actually make the roster. So I think he'd had an injury cloud as well. But that lessens off this year. So if he makes it this year, he's more cuttable this year, but you'd still eat $8 million dead money. You'd save $7 million. But next year, if they found that he had gone downhill, they would be able to cut him and only have a $2.5 million cap hit and save $15 million. So Trey Hendrickson, if the Bengals don't go deep in the playoffs, that he could be someone that they look to move and or trade, right? Won't just be a cut. Now he's interesting because he had an OTC valuation of $13.2 million last year. So he technically under-delivered on his contract, but you're measuring, PFF doesn't measure half sacks, and PFF's not measuring everything that player does on the field necessarily the way other people see value. The cool thing, though, between Sweat or like Hendrickson versus Sweat is that Sweat's numbers now obviously he's getting paid a bit less per year, but his percentage of the cap is all over the place. I talked about this on the Dollars and Cents show, the importance of letting the cap do the work for you, whereas the player technically should take up a higher percentage as the cap gets bigger. You should backload the contract where you can, because as the cap increases, the percentage stays the same. And if you base your roster and key positions around percentages, you can find that you've got extra cap in certain places, which allows you to make moves. And when you go through what Omar Khan's been able to do in his first year in GM, he's definitely applying that principle. Or if he's not, it's a very wacky coincidence. But my point being is that Trey Hendrickson basically takes up between 6.4 and 6.8, around 6.9% of the cap across his 4-year deal, which is pretty cool to see that that's pretty even. Bengals like to keep it simple from a contract perspective. If you take this as an example. So when we go to the Steelers then, what does this look like in re-signing Alex Highsmith? So Alex Highsmith right now is on a $2.9 million deal for this year. $2.743 million is his base salary. He's on a bonus of $208,000. He's not even made $1 million in bonuses. As I said, he's got 22.5 sacks, but he had an OTC valuation last year of $16.6 million. Does that mean he's going to get $16.6 million? Probably not, because right now that would equal him to a Shaquille Barrett, or a Chandler Jones, or a Cameron Jordan, or a Harold Landry, or even a Von Miller. Now, he probably wants it. And I do, when we go to do a contract, think that maybe you get him in the 15, 16, but we'll see what that looks like. So the Steelers salary cap right now is projected salary. So the team salary cap right now is there's about 13 million in space. I talked about this earlier on the week. There's actually almost double that you can find in the cap if you want to with them this year. So Steelers can still make big moves. And that's why I'm getting a bit more confident about the inside linebacker position. But anyway, next year they're projected based on what the projected cap's meant to be and where the spending looks like right now. They'll have about the same in place. But there's restructures you can do. And that's the other thing. You might see a restructure this year of TJ Watt to allow them to sign Alex Highsmith. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to bring up, I think this is only because I'm a paid subscriber. Now, we're going to keep this simple. I don't want to put voidable years because that's going to get complex, as you saw with the Josh Sweat, or as you would have listened to, if we couldn't see that clearly, or you were doing something else while you're listening. That gets complex and messy in how it is, right? So I'm not going to do that. You can do all different types of bonuses, but again, that starts to get pretty complex. Now, if we look at Trey Hendrickson, he had $15 million in guaranteed salary. The Steelers don't guarantee a salary across the contract. They guarantee you through a roster bonus, right? So that's the key thing that we want to do. They also like to basically, like, the signing bonus is bigger and like to do that in the first year as much as they can. And this is interesting because if Alex Highsmith signs he could sign what we call a 5-year deal with a 4-year extension. And that way you are preloading the pro rata bonus into this year, right? So that's where it could be quite interesting. Now, if we did that, let's say at because remember, the Steelers don't guarantee a contract, right? What you could basically do is give him, let's say, 20 million guaranteed, right? Because that would defer 4 million into this year's cap. Remember, they've got 13 space. I said they've got another 12, right? So you've got 14 straight out there. 20 straight out there. You're guaranteeing that, and because they're not going to guarantee any other years. That's not how they do the contracts, right? But you can take 4 million of whatever that deal is going to be there and stick it into this year because you've got the space, right? Then you probably then go, okay, if we look at the edge contracts that we've seen, and you've got like a really good player in John Franklin Myers and Randy Gregory all on the 13 million mark. Let's say they give Highsmith, maybe 9. We'll go 9, 8. Right. So that's the 13.2 million cap hit, right? So that would put him on par, just below Josh Sweat and DeMarcus Lawrence, right? But remember, you've still got Cam Hayward on contract. So you've got to be careful on what you do on that line, right? Maybe we boost him up. Maybe we do it to 9.8. Yeah, you can have 3.5. Salary cap's going up too. All right. Then you maybe do a $10.3 million deal. Doesn't do it. Then they do 10.3, and then 10.3. This gets very fiddly, very hard to do that. 14. Then you probably go to like I'd probably do I try and get away with only going up another $500,000. But then you go probably, let's just do 11, and then we'll do like 11.8 million, right? Now, if we do that, you're looking at that cap number, and actually then the 15.8 brings him below Shaquille back. So, I mean, it isn't interesting if you go and transact that, because you're looking at I'm going to do some very quick maths here. You're looking at this is about a $60 million deal, right? Now your average per is going to then be about 15 million across the 4 years. But what they could do is they could give him a non-pro rata bonus, which would be like a roster bonus here. Let's say you gave him 1.5 million, and this could be a performance-based bonus as well. You could give him it could be like 12 sacks or something like that, and you could do the same thing here for 2 million if you wanted to. But I don't see that being the case. Anyway, let's put that in. Let's give him that so he can have 63 million across 4, and we'll transact that. And then you can see we can go up to that contract. Oh, it's not going to do it for me. But essentially, we do that, and then Alex Highsmith, and then what you can see across the years is you go 2024, his number is 13.5 million in 2024, right? And that's interesting because you got Cam Hayward at 22 million, right? Then you go there, he's at 14 million, because, right, remember, we prorated the bonus. So 4 million of his bonus is being paid off in 2023. It's like paying down the credit card early. Then you've got him in 2026 at $16 million in cap hit. And then you've got him at $17.8 million at 30 years old, right? So he's still making money. So Alex Highsmith, you can pay him now. He gets $4 million this year up front. So happy days for him. Well, he gets all the bonus paid out, but it's only $4 million in the cap for the Steelers this year. You get that. And that's really helpful because he'd be the only player you've got signed there through the 2027, apart from the rookies from this year. But Benton, he'll be 3 years into the league there. It'll be much cheaper team. TJ, the other thing you got to remember too is TJ Watt's only on contract till 2025. So a lot of people said they'll just do a restructure. If for me, I'd actually do an extension rather than a restructure. But they don't have a heck ton of cap room to play with. But they need to do this while Kenny Pickett's on a rookie contract. That's going to be really, really key for them. So, and it might be that you wait till Logan Joby's off. But anyway, that gives you a good sense of what a contract for Alex Highsmith could look like across the years where we basically had him there total. It's just very funny. Sometimes they don't let you pull this. They don't let you pull this up. But yeah, they don't want to let me re-pull it up. But basically, we signed him to a bonus of 20 million, and about that average there. We signed him to about $40 million, just over a tick over at $42 million in the base salary, and then we signed him. We gave him about $4 million. We gave him $3.5 million. Sorry, in non-pro-rata bonuses. So I called them roster bonuses for sack numbers, right? So we gave him that in 20 when he was 29 and when he was 30. So incentive to keep performing. And so what I basically mean to say is that I don't think Alex Highsmith is going to go out and get a $72 million deal or $75 million deal. That would be 5 on 15, or a $70 million deal, which would be 16 to 17 across 4. But I do think you will see a minimum. You may see I don't think you're going to see a 6 with what Omar Khan wants to do. And with only 22.5 sacks, mind you, I don't think you're going to see a 6-year deal with a 5-year extension. I think you're going to see a 5-year extension, a 5-year deal with a 4-year extension. Remember the terminology. You're going to see it for somewhere in the vicinity of the bonus, which will be the guaranteed salary, because they don't guarantee salaries outside bonuses. I mean, Omar Khan could shift that, but I don't see him needing to, of 20 million. And then you're going to have your base salary is somewhere about 42 million. And then you've got the bonuses to tick him up to an extra 3 to 4 million on 60. And again, if you're 64 million and you're getting paid $16 million a year, you are pretty up there with guys like Hassan Reddick, who has had some incredible performances. You're ahead of Trey Hendrickson. You're ahead of Danielle Hunter, ahead of Randy Gregory. ahead of even Matt Judon at the Patriots, DeMarcus Lawrence, Josh Sweat. So a little bit below Landry, but the Titans are having to overpay people. Sorry, a little under Landry, but Titans are having to overpay people. But I think this would be a really fair deal for Alex Highsmith, and it'd be a fair deal for the Steelers as well. But anyway, that gives you an insight into what a possible contract extension could look like for Alex Highsmith. I'm Matty Peverill. Join us on Friday evening live on the East and West Coast, and we will bring to you our next Steelers touch down under. As always, go Steelers.